this collaborative effort really works across any delivery method. And I've heard people say, well, we can't use AWP for design bid build. Well, you can, but maybe it's not the contractor that's involved early on. Maybe it's a CM advisor that's involved, that's helping to do this early planning. For EPC, oil and gas work, it's a good approach. It's actually used a fair amount there. It's one of the places where it has some strength. Design build, people may say you can't use it in design build because you only go to 30% documents and then you hand off to the contractor. Well, we still have work package development, and whether we're identifying those work packages at the owner side on the designer and one engineer, and then a different engineer takes it over for the contractor, there's still an engineer involved that's going to detail out, and we still want to chase the right work package development, the right sequencing. And as you move forward from others, same things happen. I will say that integrated project delivery is probably the approach that has been most best aligned with AWP, because you put a team together very early and you do very early planning, and then it makes it easy enough to do that. Multi-prime takes some pretty strong coordination, as we know anyway, but we can still use it. So AWP works in any scenario. We just have to set it up appropriately.
We can quickly cover those two questions, and if we have time, we can go over to two fantastic audience here that are live with us. So
yeah, and I appreciate that last question. That was a good question. And call me one day, we'll chat about Cairo. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so now I've made myself forget what the questions were. What was the first one?
One was the application of AWP. Is it just for
Size
big
of
projects, or you can have it on small? And the second one was how you measure the progress of your AWP implementation.
Okay. Clearly, smaller projects are probably not going to accommodate AWP. I think every project accommodates a good CPM scheduling sequence, because that's what it takes to plan. But there has to be enough of a procurement effort. There has to be enough of a workplace planning effort. So small projects usually don't accommodate that. You don't necessarily need it. I would look at it from the standpoint of how complex are your work packages. So if you're building a little 2-story office building, and your work packages are typically a ceramic tile package, maybe a structural steel package, you really are probably not going to need to step into AWP. It's going to cost you some time and effort. It's probably not, if you're doing a great job of schedule sequencing, you can do that without having to embrace AWP. But if you're on a big project and you're on, maybe it's cost reimbursable, so you got a lot of labor in the field that are going to spend money when they're doing the work at the work phase, AWP will save money, will save time and effort. Measuring performance. So I think there's two things to look at there. One, you can good sequencing and building that relationship with the A&E and feeding them the information. So I think you measure the progress by how well you're doing with that. And of course, one way to measure it is how good are your work packages. So when you get your engineering work packages and you start procuring with them, how much trouble are you having? Are they pretty thorough? Are you getting a lot of questions? Do you put out an electrical procurement effort with the package and you get 1 million RFIs, then you haven't done a very good job with that package. So I think you'll get the feedback out of the bid market on how good your engineering work packages are. And then as you start trying to move into work and you see how smooth it goes, how much disruption are you having? If your job is not running smoothly, then you probably haven't done a very good job with the sequencing. So I think that's the two answers. So then the question is, does the AACE support the AWP? The TCM framework doesn't explicitly discuss advanced work packaging, but it does support work package sequencing, which is basically what I'm saying, what we're doing with the CPM schedule. In the TCM Framework, section 4.1 is called project implementation. And it's there that it defines the asset scope, the functional characteristics, objectives, and such, establishes constraints and assumptions. So this is the first point where we are starting to capture the constraints to the project planning and communicates implementation basis. So 4.1 helps establish the goals for sequence work packages and accommodates it very well. Section 7.1, sort of looks at the iterative process more than anything. And that feeds well into what we're talking about as a double check and everything else. But sequencing tends to be part of that planning discussion as we break it down into execution strategies. So this is the process map for project scope and execution strategy development from AACE. It's from the TCM Framework. This is all there. There's a good solid planning effort. AWP support in planning. You need this planning. We break down the organization and the strategy, break down scope, and we can start implementing advanced work packaging on the rest of these areas very quickly. And then we develop work packages. So there's nothing to say that this couldn't be, 10 individual work packages that are all being developed at the same time. And then that sort of works through the process. So the TCM Framework, I think, supports AWP very well. And even at 7.1.1, which is the strategy, we define the conceptual scope, we define the strategy, which is important. And this is the one where I say we define this ahead of having a lot of details, but we work this out. We set up a stage gate process for this iterative effort, document and update it. And so this section establishes the need for sequence work packages. So that works as well. 7.1.4 is where you develop the work packages. So this is where we're developing the engineering work packages. And it's where you plan component deliverables. So you set them up as the work packages. But work packages are the integration of the WBS and the OBS. So it takes into account how the people are involved, how the organizational structure gets involved, what trades are doing what off of the WBS. And this defines the scope of responsibility. So if we have a culture of weak CPM scheduling, it's really hard to move into AWP. But if we sort of adopt the AACE TCM framework and good scheduling techniques, then we really have support, and we're marching on the right path towards AWP.